honored guests, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to tonight's concert. We are very glad to host this concert as a concluding event for the exhibition in the library. We featured the music and costume from Central Asia, Caucasus, and the Middle East, and it was visited by a large audience over the last 6 months, and we are glad to have such a success and support from all of you. So tonight we have honored guests from the Consulate Generals of the Islamic Republic of Iran, Mr. Esmail Zadeh and his family here. And then we have also representative from the Consulate General of the Republic of Kazakhstan with Consul General Mr. Yerishev here and his colleagues. And we have also the honor to have the presence of Mr. Öcalan from the Turkish Consulate General in Hong Kong. Look at that. And I have to apologize on behalf of the president of HKUST, Professor Shiu, for his absence today. I'm very sorry that he was caught up in an urgent matter and is not able to come. So sorry for his absence. And I leave Eugene to start the concert, and we have some change in program because of a sudden change in the performers. One more word before the concert. We have here on display also a chant, C-H-A-N-T, or the harp, better known as harp in Western music. It is a loan item from the Iranian consulate, and they have specially ordered this piece of music instrument from Iran. So yeah, we are very glad for the support of the Iranian Republic. Thank you very much. So may I invite Eugene to start the concert. Thank you very much.
Okay, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Eugene. I'm the curator of this exhibition, and I'll also be guiding you through the music tonight. So let's not treat it as just a concert, but more of a journey through the various musics of Iran. As Anna was saying, unfortunately, our harpist could not be here with us today. So, but we have a video of her performance, so we'll start with this video, and then we'll take the evening from there. See you later.
رفتم به باغ صبح دمی تا چنم گلی آمد به گوش ناگهم آواز بلبلی مسکین چو من به عشق گلی گشته مبتلا و اندر چمن فکنده ز فریاد غلغلی می گشتم اندر آن چمن و باغ دم به دم می کردم اندر آن گل و بلبل تأملی گل یار حسن گشته و بلبل قرین عشق آن را تفضلی نه و این را تبدلی چون کرد در دلم اثر آواز عندلیب گشتم چنان که هیچ نماندم تحملی بس گل شکفته می شود این باغ را ولی کس بی بلای خار نچیده است از او گلی حافظ مدار امید فرج از مدار چرخ دارد هزار عیب و ندارد تفضلی.
So, what we just heard was a poem of Hafiz, one of the most celebrated poets of Iran, and his poetry is known not only in Iran, but throughout what we can call a world that is very much influenced by Persianate culture. So in Central Asia, or even as far as Iran, India, of course, the poetry and the poetic imagination of Persian poetry is very influential. In fact, I myself, I'm not a specialist of Persian music, but rather I know a thing or two about the music in the Persianate world, music in Central Asia and the surroundings. And so tonight, as we journey through the music of Iran, we can look at it from its contours, from what surrounds it, in order to give it a more we can look at it from different dimensions. So this is what we'll be doing tonight. So in the poem we heard just now, there is a very famous imagery of the flower, the rose, and the nightingale, signifying, perhaps you would have gotten it already, the nightingale as the lover who sings of his yearning for his beloved, the rose, but they are separated by the thorns, by the treacherous journey of love. And this imagery is very widespread, and it speaks of this very intimate, yearning feeling that we hear in the music, in Persian music, in a lot of Persian traditional music. But what is more, what is very interesting to note that is that this imagery of the bird and flower, in fact, if this comes from Chinese painting as well, as some of you may know, and it also, this particular painting is from the Song dynasty, and there it speaks of deep feelings as well. So we can see this intimate kind of sensibilities in the art is something we share in our traditional culture as well. And as you will see later when we go into the music, the instruments of Iran are, in a way, they resemble Chinese instruments quite a lot, and also in the aesthetics, although there are, of course, many differences. One of the major differences is in the notes we play. When you listen to the harp just now, maybe you'd have heard some notes that didn't sound quite in tune to a Western ear. But in fact, these are what we call microtones, tones that are not the usual ones that we're accustomed to in Western music. But a lot of the time, it is these notes that give you this heightened sensibility. So this is what we will be trying to present to you tonight as well. And some of the pieces that we'll play, they're grouped according to the way the notes are organized. So in the first two pieces we'll hear tonight, they will be from the same kind of mode, same kind of musical system. It gives a similar feeling. And then in three other pieces afterwards, there will be another feeling, but we'll go to there later. Okay, so the first two pieces we'll be playing tonight is from a mode called shur, and apparently it is very typical of Persian music. It conveys this very typical sensibility. So the first instrument we will hear from tonight is called the Santor, which you can see on the far right-hand side of this painting which is of musicians in 19th century Iran. You can see how there's an intimate gathering with a few instruments. So this is the kind of ambience we're talking about. And the santur, many of you might recognize it to be quite similar to a Chinese instrument, the yangqin. Although the santur is much smaller. And apparently, and we'd think, oh, perhaps the santur originated in China and went west or the other direction. But we don't know where it comes from, in fact. In fact, there are theories that say, in fact, it originated from Europe. But it disappeared in Europe, but we kept this going on. So without further ado, I'd like to invite our first musician, Ashley, to play the santur for us in a piece called the Darbuka Shur and the Renge Shur, an introduction and a dance, please. Thank you, Ashley. So, the second instrument we'll hear from tonight, before I show you the picture, I'll just tell you its name. It's called the Sitar. Does that ring any bell? Does that sound familiar to any of you? The Sitar. Let's have a look at it. So, the name of it might remind you of the Indian sitar, which is actually much bigger. But this is probably the very original sitar. What does sitar mean? Tar, guitar. Tar actually means strings. And so sitar, in fact, literally means 3 strings. But this instrument here we have is 4 strings because one of the strings are doubled to make it, to give it a bigger sound. So this class of instruments, these what we call long-necked lutes, they are very, very common throughout Iran. There are very many different varieties of it, and as well as in Central Asia, all the way to today's Xinjiang, we'll find instruments like this with long neck, a few strings, and they have the suffix called tar. And the Persian sitar is a very intimate instrument. It's usually played solo, but it's also the foundation. It also gives the foundation of much of Persian music system. And so the following piece will also be in the same mode, shur, but this is a rather special composition which is composed by a French musicologist, a French expert of Iranian music called Jean During. And in this piece, he used the mode of shur, but he drew on rhythms from Turkey, and in a 9-beat rhythm. So in a way, it's a kind of fusion music, East-East fusion music. And this rhythm actually comes from a religious ritual called the Samah, which is related to Sufism, the Islamic mystical practices, which has its roots, we can say, or which is very prevalent in Iran, in Turkey, and around the Islamic world as well. So this next piece is called Samai Ashur, which I'll be playing on the sitar.
سخنگوی دهقان چه گوید نخست، که نام بزرگی به گیتی که جست. که بود آن که دیهیم بر سر نهاد، ندارد کسان روزگاران به یاد. مگر کز پدر یاد دارد پسر، بگوید تو را یک به یک در به در. که نام بزرگی که آورد پیش، چرا بود از آن برتران پای بیش. پژوهنده نامه باستان، که از پهلوانان زند داستان. چنین گفت کآیین تخت و کلاه، کیومرث آورد و او بود شاه. چو آمد به برج حمل آفتاب، جهان گشت با فر و آیین و آب. بتابید از آن سان ز برج بره، که گیتی جوان گشت از آن یک سره. کیومرث شد بر جهان کدخدای، نخستین به کوه اندرون ساخت جای. سر بخت و تختش برآمد به کوه، پلنگینه پوشید خود با گروه. از او اندر آمد همی پرورش، که پوشیدنی نو بود و نو خورش. به گیتی درون سال 30 شاه بود، به خوبی چو خورشید برگاه بود. همی تافت زو فر شاهنشهی، چو ماه 2 هفته ز سرو سهی.
Stories of battles, of heroism, of valiance, and in this very famous epic poem. And it is the spirit of this kind of story that we want to bring in the next section, when we focus on music in the mood, or in the mode of chargach. This is another way of arranging the note, and a lot of time, in fact, this mode, this way of arranging the notes, is used for the singing of portions of the Shahnameh around Iran. And so we just want to present to you these different types of mood. And the next instrument we're going to have is called the kamancha. The kamancha is, as you can see, a bowed instrument that is in fact played upright. It is in a way a bit similar to the violin in that it also has 4 strings. But you can see on them, it has a round body and it has a animal skin cover for its soundboard. And you'll see how we have to turn it around when we play. And the next piece is a pishtaramad, an introduction to this mode, charga, which will be performed by Tsang. Please. Thank you, Tsang. So, in fact, this Comanche, we find variants of it around Central Asia and Iran as well, in different forms. And this next instrument we will hear also has traveled around different countries, but it has a very interesting history. It is called the kanun. And this kanun, traditionally, has been played in Iran, but then it somewhat disappeared from the instrumentarium for about 400 years, since about the 1600s. And it was reintroduced into Iran at the turn of the 20th century. And so this instrument today, we actually associate it more with Arabic music or Turkish music, but in fact it is also played in Iran as well. So this instrument, the kanun, it is, you can call it like a laptop harp or a laptop piano, where you pluck, I think it's 4 strings or 3 strings at the same time, and it has a fascinating sonority that you will hear in a moment. And so without further ado, may I invite Jesse to perform for us, also in Chaharga in this mode, but this is a rang, a dance with a little opening improvisation. Thank you, Jesse. So we were talking about the sharing of culture with its neighbors. And in Iranian music, in fact, Iran shares borders with many different nations, and there's a lot of musical confluence between them. And one of the neighboring countries that Iran has the deepest musical relations with is, in fact, Azerbaijan, a country in the Caucasus. And they're neighbors, and in Iran, in fact, in northwestern Iran, there is a very huge Azeri community there, Azeri population. And in fact, Azerbaijan, they have their own classical music system, but it is very, very, very similar to Persian classical music in many ways. And so in some of the pieces, you can hear the same kind of organization, and in which charga, we can find charga in Azeri music as well. And in fact, in terms of musical instruments, there is an instrument that the Iran and Azerbaijan share as well, although in slightly different form, which is this, called the tar. Simply called the tar, but it doesn't only have one string. This one has 6 strings. This is a Persian tar, and it is one of the most common classical music instruments in Iran. And it is made of one block of wood, and the skin on top, some say it has to be made of the skin of unborn lamb in order to give it its particular sound. And so in Iran, there's a version of the tar, and in Azerbaijan, they took it and they have reinvented it a little bit as well. And so in the following piece, we will actually be performing in fact, 3 dances in charga from the Azeri tradition. And I'll be playing on the tar, and I'll be joined by El Nur, who is Azeri himself, and he was a PhD student here, now a postdoc. Yes. So he'll be joining me on his drum called the Darbuka. Can we get that? Yes. So this is a drum that is very prevalent throughout the Middle East and in the Caucasus as well. So we will be doing this slight fusion. I'll be playing this Azeri piece on a mode shared by Iran and Azerbaijan. So here we go. And now, we have traveled around Iran a bit. We've heard the major instruments. And it's about time that we go on to see something different. So just now, we had music from the Azeri population from Azerbaijan. And in fact, around Iran, we have various different communities, ethnic groups, religious communities, and we'll touch on some of their music. The first group that I'd like to touch on is, we were in the west here just now, and now we'd go all the way to the east part, near the Afghan border. So this region is called Khorasan, and historically it was one of the major center of arts and culture in the Islamic world in the medieval times, in the Timurid period, in fact. And here, they're slightly different from the rest of Iran in that here, they are actually Sunnis, not like the majority Shia. And here, you can see it's on the border of Afghanistan. There is certain music that they share as well. And in this furthest east of, well, not furthest east, but in this border, there is a sacred music centered around a town called Torbatejam, and it is played on an instrument that has only 2 strings, so which is called the dotar, 2 strings, dotar. And in fact, the dotar is found in many different formats from this point on eastwards around Central Asia. So this is one variant of it, and in there they play a sacred music very much related to their own Sufi rituals as well. And so I'll be playing for you a piece from this repertoire from Eastern Khorasan, from Torbatejam, which is called Navai. Navai is, in fact, the name of a very famous poet from what is today Uzbekistan. But he had a very strong friendship with Jami, a Persian poet who apparently wrote this piece in celebration of their friendship. So this is Navai. So I was saying the dutar has many forms in Iran and around Central Asia. So, and in Iran, we also have different Central Asian peoples as well, such as here in the top right-hand corner in the northeast. They are the Turkmens who, of course, there are loads of them in Turkmenistan, where they come from, but there's also a sizable Turkmen community in Iran. And in fact, my own teacher of the Turkmen dutar, which looks quite similar. Yes, is from Iran, from the city of Gondar-e-Kavus. And so we'll hear like you hear just now, the dutar of Khorasan is very sonorous. But this dutar from the Turkmens is a lot more subtle. And as you listen, you can see there are many very interesting and maybe hard to decipher gestures on both hands. And this piece that I'm going to play called Dön Gönüm is actually from, they use it a lot for reciting the epic poetry as well. So this idea of reciting epic poetry as to remember history is very prevalent, not only among Iranians, but also in Central Asia as well. And we'll get to a bit more of that later. But now let's first hear Dön Gönüm on the Turkmen dutar. So we've been traveling towards, from Iran towards its northeast, towards Central Asia. And in fact, as we were saying, Central Asia is also part of this Persianate world. And let's see how much further we can push this. Some of us may know, for example, in Uzbekistan and Tajikistan, you will also find mosques or even like clothing that's quite similar to what we find in Iran. But how about if we push further? How about Kazakhstan? In fact, there are still quite a bit of similarities in the culture. Kazakhstan, like the rest of Central Asia, is a Muslim nation, and its ideas of Islam, a lot of it came from a very Persianate interpretation of Islam. And at the same time, like we're saying, this storytelling is also very prevalent in Kazakhstan as well, among Kazakhs, among nomadic nations in Central Asia. So tonight we'll have this special presentation of Kazakh music in this concert as a kind of relief, because we have a very different sound, and as a contrast and comparison as well. So in terms of storytelling, in fact, this year is the 175th anniversary of one of the most famous storytellers and folk singer. These two are one thing in Kazakh traditional culture. He's called Jambal Jabayev, and he's one of the most renowned folk singers and storyteller in Kazakh history, because among nomadic nations, a lot of the time, when you cannot carry books around with you, you have to carry stories around in order to remember your history, your customs. And so tonight, we will have another student of UST, Bekjan. He will be playing two pieces, two very intimate pieces from the Kazakh music repertory. And he'll be also playing on a two-stringed instrument. It's not called a duta, by the way. It's called the dombra. So if you've heard of this, maybe you've heard it playing some very rhythmic, energetic pieces that reminds you of horses galloping or something. But here, tonight, we have a special occasion to hear a very soft version of it. We can hear some very intimate, very touching pieces played on the dombra on a different kind of technique. So may I invite Bekjan on stage. Thank you, Victor. So we have gone through many different kind of instruments, plucked instruments, bowed instruments, strummed instrument. There's still one that we haven't really talked about, but which is the most important in Persian music and in many music in Central Asia. And that is actually the voice, singing. Singing of poetry, singing of stories is extremely important and basic to all these music traditions. And so we will also be presenting a song to you to round this event off. But instead of singing very heavy poetry, we'll be singing what they call tasnif, a lighter genre of Persian songs for you. And this song is one of the most famous songs sung by Mohammad Reza Shajarian, one of Iran's best known singers in the 20th century. Tomorrow would be the first anniversary of his passing away. So this song that we'll be singing is one of his favorites and one of his fans' favorite around the world. It's called Morghe Sahar. شربا این قفس را راز هناشه او سرکان سکانجر کفست را نغمه آزادی نای بشه سرا و از نفسی عرشه خاک تو درا تو سرکو ظلم ظالم جار سیار آشیان امداد برباد ای خدا ای فلک ای طبیعت شام تاریک ما را سحر کن نوبهار است چال سایه است ابر چشمم جال خیره این قفس چون دلم تنگ و تا است شعله فکان در قفس آه آتشی دست طبیعت گل عمر مرا مچی جانب عاشق نگاه تار آتشی
دیشتگان 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 مرغ بیدل شرق هجران مختصر مختصر کن مرغ بیدل شرق هجران مختصر مختصر کن.